Yeah, that's Hannah Taylor.
Is it on? Yes. I have a couple of questions real quick before we get too far into the afternoon. One of them actually is for Debbie, I think. we have some information from the end of the school year about staff who retired and left. I just wondered if you had any updates on that number at hand, or if you could get that information for us, either one.
I can certainly get the information, but the number that Eller gave you of about 30 vacancies is what I currently have.
Okay, that's just what I wondered about. Because I know that number does change some over the summer. So what was the number you had at the end of the year? Is that what you wanted to know, Michelle? Just a moment. Oh, okay. Number of staff members last year versus the total number of staff members this year. Are you talking certified? Okay. Just questions we have. If you could get answers to those at whatever time, sometime over the next day or two. So that, first of all. And then, LR, just a real quick question for you before we go into anything else. I know you spent this morning with the insurance people. Are you anywhere close to resolution? Understanding that is, I would have thought last year would be described as the most difficult year, but it sounds like this year is worse. So do you anticipate knowing something before the end of this week, or where are you at in those talks?
Yes, I'd say as a conclusion of discussions this morning, that I'm where we need to be.
Okay, all right. And so we'll see that proposal later in the week?
Yes.
Okay. That's just what I was wondering about. Okay, is there anything else that you want to bring up before we move on?
I think it's only fair, since we took up the first half of the day, that we turn it over to you and we take our turn in listening.
Okay, all right. That sounds good. And so I'm gonna refresh back. I know you said this morning that you didn't really want to talk about monetary things until the end of, we usually do non-monetary first and then go into the monetary issues. So there is sometimes a little bit of give and take in both places. As we talk about staffing for next year, of course, we've talked about that quite a bit. I know that there has been considerable conversation about the possibility of more combo classrooms this year than we've had in the past. I think Jermaine said that they'd be going down to the 3-tier. So 3 kindergarten, 3 first grade. And so with that happening, and Gary's got an estimate on how many students we may lose, understanding that those are just estimates based on previous trends at this point. We anticipate that there may be more of those multi-level classrooms this year. Our concern is not in the compensation that's already in the book. Our concern is that the multi-level classroom decision may have to be made after the start of the school year. So we would like to say that on the first day of school, August 11th, we have all of our ducks in a row and all of the children where they need to be and all the teachers where they need to be. But we do know that in years past, a multi-level classroom or a combo classroom where you have a small number of second graders in one class, a small number of third graders in another class, and it might be September or even October before that combo class is created. Then that's rare, but based on the fact that we may need more combo classes this year, that's our level of concern. So the language that's in the contract specifically says, that if these combo classes happen, a multi-level classroom is to occur, and the students are assigned for the entire year to a multi-level classroom, there is compensation in place. And looking at the language that's in the contract, the only thing, there's a couple of changes that we are asking, and I've got it here. I'm going to say it, and then I'll walk this across so that you can see what I'm talking about. But the original language says that a multi-level classroom is a self-contained combination classroom consisting of students. I'm on page 60 of our contract, if anybody needs to know that. Grades 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, 4, 4, 5 were assigned for the entire school year. The General Director of Human Resources must approve multi-level classroom, multi-grade level classrooms in advance. All of that is the language that's there. What we're asking for is two things. We would like to replace the word self-contained combination classroom to general education combination classroom. And we would like to change the language where it says assigned for an entire year. We would like to insert in there partial or the entire school year. So, for example, if a teacher is asked to be a combo, if that combination classroom happens in September, we would like the compensation that's already been in place to be prorated from the time period in which the teacher takes on the responsibility of the combo level classroom. I'm just gonna walk this across to you, Eller.
You want me to take this to them? Their copies? Huh? Their copies?
Oh, yeah, copies for all of them?
Yeah.
Awesome, thank you. All right, copies right here.
There's an extra in there for Billy as well.
I believe this occurred last year, and we went through a teacher that had to move to a combo classroom a couple of months in, and they had to do quite a bit of talking to get her to get the prorated pay. And so we'd like to see that practice continue this year, and anyone who has to teach the combo classroom or is asked to after the year starts, that they get a prorated amount of pay, because they're doing, you know, essentially 2 grade levels.
So the proration that you're talking about, is that, are you just referring to what's outlined in number 5 of Article 36, that's on page 56, payment for any professional employee who fails to complete an assigned supplemental contract may be prorated, or are we actually going to add language to the double asterisk paragraph on page 60 about the proration?
I think up to this point, past practice has been that when a professional employee fails to complete an assignment, that indeed is what happens. Their contract is prorated. So we're not asking for any change there. I believe you're talking about the other side of this issue, if a teacher leaves mid-year or something like that. And what we're talking about on page 60 is just simply if a teacher is asked, and I would use the example that we talked about this morning, a long-term sub in a classroom at an elementary school, say at the 4th grade level, and they find that they don't have enough students to fill that extra 4th grade class. a combo class could be created, whereas you had a teacher there at the beginning of the year, that long-term sub, but then the school's enrollment is down, they realize they don't need that long-term sub, and now we've created a combo classroom the third week of August, the second week of September. And so the concern on our part is just that it doesn't specifically say in the contract that partial year combo classroom is compensated. And so we're just asking for clarification on language. It doesn't change the compensation that's in there at all. It just, I believe, allows both sides of the table to have some flexibility. If a combo classroom has to be created after the beginning of the school year, then certainly the teacher should be paid for teaching a combo classroom according to the rate that's already in the contract. We just want to make sure that that happens. So that gives administration some flexibility there, but also ensures that our membership is properly compensated for a combo classroom.
I think my question was more just making sure that, because there was, in your explanation, you were talking about prorated pay, but there's no language in the changes indicating that if it's a partial year, that will be prorated. So I was wondering if we were relying on the language on page 56, which, as you kind of explained, it talks more about failing to complete as opposed to, taking duties partway through the year.
Right.
So that was my question, just for some clarification as to where the language for the prorating was coming in, if we're relying on current language or just so, again, we're clear as to what the
Right.
proposal is.
So what I hear you saying, and let me ask you this, the language that we have written, would it clarify, be a better clarifier if we were to say, assigned for a partial year would receive a prorated amount? Should we include that language in there? I'm asking you as the legal representative.
Again, and I'm not making any statement on behalf of the team that,
Right.
on the proposal, but just from for clarity, I think it would be important to make sure that that's clear, because the way it's currently written, it just says, that they will be paid, as outlined in that part 4, which is 0.45% or 5.6% for a partial or an entire year. So I think we either need to link back to the language on page 56, or clarify in that paragraph under the 2 asterisks that that's the intent. So that would be something just, without considering anything else, I think we would need to entertain to make sure that everybody's on the same page and we're clear with the language.
So are we okay with the language as it is, you guys, or do you want to?
I think that we were clear that it's going to be prorated if we're going to have that. So they get prorated the extra amount.
Okay, Brenda has suggested that, looking at the document you have in front of you, just an additional sentence, the amount paid would be prorated for the amount of time of the placement. Right before it says general director, and we can, of course, redraft this for you. Just to clarify how they would be paid.
I think we understand what your intent is. We appreciate that clarification.
Would you like us to type that into a document? That could then be submitted for review?
Yes, if you would, please.
Can you pull it up right here?
Yeah.
Somebody here can print that for us?
I just need to know that secretaries.
It's, do thou one.
Lucinda,
Yes.
if I understand correctly, I think the comment was made that this was a situation that occurred once this past school year.
This last school year.
Yeah, this last school year, Jermaine is.
There's been a grievance, but
You need to
it,
call her and ask
she
her
would,
to make
had taught a regular classroom, and then a couple months in, she had to go and
12 copies of it.
they put a couple
Go
classes
call her and
together,
try to make 12
but they
copies.
wanted to give her, they did not want to give her the extra addendum. And so it went through conversations and other grievance,
If you just want to send
and
it.
it ended up that she did get
You know one?
the extra addendum prorated from the time she started a combo to the end. And so it was done last year. We just want to put it in writing so there's no confusion that if a teacher does get assigned to a combo
You
classroom,
can call her.
that they will get the extra addendum,
But
but
I can highlight
prorated.
changes.
If they have to jump to it in September after numbers are there. And the principal says, well, we think a combo would be better because of your numbers.
I think
So it was addressed there.
it was a result of the micro classrooms and students transitioning back to on-site. And so we added and adjusted micro classrooms.
So it wasn't, we just want to make it clear in the language that there's no confusion on if someone has to go in September, they're teaching third grade, but the principal feels like, we got a lot of fourth graders here and too few third grade, so we're going to make you a 3-4 combo. That they will be able to get the extra addendum prorated to the end of the year.
And I think moving forward, the example that we're giving was based on the issues, of course, related to COVID last year. But moving forward, that uncertainty is still here as we try and figure out what this new rise in numbers will do to us. I think, and I think you guys are probably very aware of this, we may find people, students who may be deciding over the next few weeks to go remote. And so we have a remote academy, an academy for students to go remote. And so we may see numbers shifting, not student numbers, Gary, so the numbers are still there. But we may see numbers shifting out of the physical classroom and into our remote options because of the way the numbers are going up right now. So we just want to be prepared. We want to use that issue last year as an example, but moving forward, we'd like to be prepared for what might happen if parents opt out of in-person learning because of the way the curve is going right now.
And there's several combo classrooms, there are several schools that are preparing for those.
Yes.
And sometimes you really don't know until school year starts that how the numbers shake out, if you're going to do a combo or not. And they should be allowed to have their addendum prorated without all the confusion. For consistency.
Yeah, I think we understand.
Okay, all right. I think we will get an updated copy of that to share with you before we leave today. And we'll bring it back at that point in time. Does anybody else on your team have any other questions or concerns about that particular issue? All right. You want me to keep going?
Yes, please.
The second thing that we wanted to talk about that is in our letter is related to the number of days that, I'm looking at the wrong, I pull up the right list here. Hours and amounts of work in our letter. We have a section on hours and amounts of work. The association seeks to bargain additional compensation and/or contract day for librarians and additional compensation and/or contract days for technology assistants. The piece that we would like to introduce and discuss right now is additional contract days for librarians, specifically at the elementary and the middle school level. Our high school librarians already have additional contract days to complete their tasks before the school year starts and after the school year ends. But currently, elementary and middle school librarians do not have those extra days built in to their work schedule. And based on the trends that we're seeing, technology being part of it, but the simple fact, and I'll have Tiffany address this a little bit more here in just a second, but the simple fact that we do use our Chromebooks until the last day of school. And so this year, the week after the last day of school, librarians in every building were inventorying Chromebooks, the ones that had been returned. And at the high school level, again, there's additional compensation for that. At the middle school level and the elementary school level, there is not. So based on our technology needs and moving forward, here in a few weeks, our librarians will have to be in the buildings early to begin to prepare for Chromebook distribution. The first or second day students are in the building, which means they can't do it before the beginning. They can't, they don't have the time before their school year starts. And again, the fact that at the end of the school year, last year, the librarians, I believe, were paid a couple of extra days.
Yeah,
I'm going to turn it over to Tiffany. She is my expert, our expert on this issue.
Can you hear me okay? All right. Try not to talk in my librarian voice. So we did receive compensation for 2 days of work at the end of the year. And we had an MOU that we signed. So that was unique. We have never been paid for work that we do prior to the duty year or at the conclusion of the duty year. And I believe that was due to the fact that we did have remote students who still had their devices for attendance purposes. They needed that on that last day on June 4th. So that was part of the reasoning, I think, that we received the 2 days of compensation then. So do you have any questions at this point? No? Okay. I have prepared a statement and it's about 7 minutes long, so you can start your timer if you want to. But I prepared the statement because I don't want to just ramble, and I do want to clarify the situation for you. Like Gary has mentioned, we are a people business, but I want to make sure that what the librarians are doing is made known to people who are watching and also to our district administrators. So I will, in my statement, talk briefly about our role during COVID, but that's not the primary focus of my concerns. I'm gonna bring you this copy, and I'm gonna read it digitally. Okay, thank you.
I don't get up and move every few minutes, my watch yells at me.
I did cut it down, so. All right, so this is essentially a rationale, and like I said, this is just to clarify the situation that librarians find themselves in, having to do work at a particular time of year where we're not being compensated across all levels. First, I would like to extend my gratitude to you as district administrators for your time and consideration. Though this topic is about hours and amounts of work for our library media specialists, it is also a monetary pressure on the district. We know that allocating dollars to additional expenditures is difficult. We also know that managing the district's limited budget is no easy feat, and for that we say thank you, Mr. Roberts, for striking a balance between fiscal responsibility and adequately funding operations. Topeka Public Schools boasts the status of model district in several regards. We are the most diverse school district in the state of Kansas, with signature and magnet campuses, as well as career and technical learning opportunities. We have strong athletic programming, a preschool through 12 robotics initiative, and a one-to-one technology initiative, and a state-of-the-art collaboration center. One of our accomplishments is an essential component of educational access, that of our one-to-one technology initiative. During school closures last spring, some districts were behind the curve in providing equitable educational access for their students, scrambling to serve them in a remote environment. 501 teachers and students were lucky that our district had the foundational technology to support remote learning. Though we prevailed in the face of school closures, we, along with all other school districts, have areas of opportunities in terms of how we support the individuals orchestrating device management. Nationally, there is a threat to one-to-one technology initiatives everywhere, and it has to do with how schools care for and manage their devices, as well as how they train their teachers in the use of technology. In turn, we face a threat to the financial investment we've made in technology as well. However, as a district, we can use the lessons we learned during COVID as an impetus towards progress. We can begin work towards becoming a regional model for protecting the investment we've made in our one-to-one initiative. One way to begin this process is to ensure that we have the personnel infrastructure to adequately support the care and management of our devices. Today, I speak on behalf of the library media specialists of 501, who work diligently with information technology, or IT, and administrators to support our district's technology initiatives. During school closures, media specialists ensured that students and teachers received devices through dissemination processes that were orderly and timely, with some librarians working long hours without compensation. This was unusual, but not terribly out of the norm. Schools without a librarian struggled to make dissemination work on the fly, consulting librarians about their plans so that they could be replicated. It was clear then that librarians are an essential component of supporting the district's technology initiatives. In order to deliver devices to students, some librarians made home visits, much like their social worker counterparts who have extra contract days to complete work that cannot be done during the duty year. In some cases, librarians prepared devices on their own, while others had support from staff. Some were paid and some were not. Media specialists not only ensured access to devices, but we worked with social workers and IT to enable access for families to the internet. In conjunction with the district, we informed parents and families about local resources, including access to the Topeka and Shawnee County Public Libraries. Librarians acted as technical support for students, families, and teachers as they navigated remote learning. We collaborated more closely with our staff than ever before, acting as tech leaders in an unfamiliar virtual environment. Some of these tasks are new, but many of them were not. Some of these tasks already comprise our day-to-day duties, but became more apparent during remote instruction. Those school closures are seemingly behind us. The demand of having students connected on day one of instruction implies that librarians work beyond the duty year. This is an increasingly common expectation throughout the district. Connectivity on day one of instruction is a best practice for 21st century learning, especially as we continue to implement state-of-the-art platforms and interactive digital resources that do not have print counterparts. Device preparation is a large task that includes checking devices in and out, cleaning them, alerting IT about repairs, inventorying them, and physically delivering them. We work to have devices ready for every single student. At the start of the year, librarians troubleshoot and set up teacher instructional technology in classrooms. We provide professional development on technology and are often expected to be experts on instructional platforms. At the end of the year, we collect instructional technology, check it in, and store it for the next year. These obligations are in addition to our duties of creating and delivering lessons, curating our collections, providing instruction in print and digital literacies, substitute teaching, performing building duties, and ensuring equitable access to essential resources for all students. Librarians are the end user support for most students and staff, acting as liaisons between schools and district departments like IT and teaching and learning. Librarians typically do not ask for much, and we aren't always the loudest people in the room, but we are fierce advocates for our students and the staff we support. Today, we advocate for ourselves. Though we are asking for something more, the thing we want more of is time, contractual time to do the essential work that is already being done. Additional contract days for all TPS 501 library media specialists affords this group the consistency of a district-wide approach to ensure that work being done beyond the duty year is compensated accordingly. Lastly, and perhaps most importantly, our budgetary expenditures demonstrate an imbalance in how much we spend on technology supplies and how much we spend on technology support. This imbalance echoes across the nation. We have an opportunity to be a leader in addressing this common imbalance. We have some amazing technology, but we have to be vigilant in establishing systems that ensure the care of the technology. The total budgetary expenditure for technology supplies from 2018 to the present, according to the district's most recent budget report, is $7,294,740. The total budgetary expenditure for technology support in terms of IT personnel and technology assistance is roughly $2,145,000. For every dollar we spend on physical supplies, we only allocate 29 cents to a human person to train teachers on technology or to manage devices through tracking and repair. While there is no national recommendation on how much school districts should spend on technology supplies in relation to how much they spend on personnel to support those supplies, there are best practices for technology spending in education. The single most important best practice in technology spending is to ensure that sufficient training and support is established. Our expenditure in technology is an investment in a nationwide initiative to provide every student with educational access to the digital world. The future of education will never not center on technology. To protect that investment financially and philosophically, as a district, we need to support library media specialists as they are the frontline stewards of the technology that facilitates 21st century teaching and learning. The librarians that I know are smart, and not just book smart. They are egalitarian, they are innovators, they are process oriented. They are a proud, pedantic group of women who do not ask for help. Librarians are the helpers, and it's difficult for us to come to you today asking for help. This proposal is not a story of greedy librarians. This proposal is about establishing a consistent approach to beginning of year operations, working towards the goal of innovating our one-to-one tech initiative, and perhaps most importantly, protecting are considerable and essential investment in technology.
That's the updated
I tried
one.
to read a lot faster.
Are these all of your copies? Yeah, everybody needs one. You can take one too. This is your updated language.
Does anybody on the team have any questions? It's very well written, very well delivered. Very much appreciated. I don't think we have any questions.
No questions? I would just add a couple of other things. Our district currently has 19 librarians. The population that we are talking about, correct? Okay. And I would also point out that while Tiffany did a wonderful job of driving home the importance of technology and how it's going to be there from beginning to end, including the last day of finals, which was June 4th of this year. Librarians no longer, or libraries no longer collect their other materials early as we used to. My experience in education is about the first week of May. I think Jermaine's experience is similar. The materials are returned to the library, whether it's videos that teachers have checked out or books that children have checked out. Those have, in the past, always been brought back the first of May, and the librarians have diligently spent those last 2 or 3 weeks of school getting everything back on the shelves, checking inventory, running down students who have failed to return any library materials that are out, and that is no longer happening either. The books and materials, Chromebooks, they all come in that last week. As she pointed out, the technology comes in the last day, and I don't think we're going to get away from that at all. I think moving forward, our content is always going to have to be delivered in a dual platform, both electronically and in person, up to and including finals, that last day of school.
So not that it matters, but we have, our high school librarians already have 10 extra contract days. So when we say we have 19 librarians, these are the librarians who currently at the elementary and middle school level don't receive any compensation for work that's done prior to the school year or at the end. So we do have some librarians who already have extra contract days, but the 19 are the ones at the elementary and middle school who don't currently.
Okay, and backtracking just a little bit, you've all been handed an updated language document for the multi-grade level classroom. Does anybody have any questions or clarification, or need clarification on that piece? does that clarify the issue that we had before? Maybe we should ask that question.
It does have clarity. Maybe Tiffany can answer a question for me.
I'll try.
I assume at some point in time, there was a reason why the high school was given additional contract days and middle and elementary was not. What was the reasoning behind that?
So I do believe that Susan Patrick, who is the librarian that I'm replacing at Topeka High, I do believe that she came and she negotiated her days. So I think at that time, she was overwhelmed by the amount of devices that she was handling at the high school level, at the secondary level. But I believe that probably the reason elementary and middle school librarians didn't receive the extra days is because, as Ms. Patrick advocated for herself, it wasn't something that she requested across the board. I'm also assuming that simply because elementary school students, in past practice, they don't take their devices home. I'm assuming that that's probably a reason why at some point it was decided that they did not need additional days. In my experience, so I'll be at Topeka High this fall, but previously I was at Scott Elementary. And I do believe that elementary librarians actually need the extra days the most because they're the only set of librarians who have an actual teaching instructional schedule. So what's been happening is we go in early to prepare devices and to troubleshoot things for teachers because we also serve as technology assistants, which essentially is an end user support role where if someone has a technical issue, they come to the librarian first. So librarians, we prepare those things in advance, and then we have to hit the ground running and begin teaching, which means students come into the library for their specials lesson. So there's almost less time at the elementary level. Even though they don't take their devices home, it's not less work in terms of preparing devices for dissemination. And I would argue probably there's more instruction that occurs for an elementary librarian with regards to technology because those students are just at a developmental point where they need more instruction in how to use the device. So I would imagine that's probably why this issue hasn't been addressed again. And I thought it was time to have this discussion simply because the district did draft an MOU to have us compensated for those additional 2 days. And some librarians were compensated for work that they did when we sent devices home during school closures, but that came out of, I believe, building budgets. Principals were responsible for paying that. And so the inconsistency there was sort of a struggle, with some librarians being paid and some librarians not being paid. So my request here is just an attempt to have more of a standard way of doing things in terms of how we compensate librarians across the district. Yeah.
The situation that you alluded to at Topeka High, I assume because that librarian lobbied, but it was put in place for other high schools at the same time it was for her?
Yes.
What was that?
I'm assuming because they have the job description and the duties, maybe not necessarily the amount of work down to the device numbers, but it's a similar, I'm assuming because it's a similar situation. I'm not 100% sure.
Do you know how many years ago this was?
So I think I think maybe was the second year that we went one-to-one. So since we've been one-to-one in the district. So it's been less than 10 years.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Next is sending a question. Sending a question to Sue Patrick. I'd rather know for sure than to estimate about when they think it was. I may or may not have an answer to that question at the end of the day, but might as well go to the source and see what happened exactly at that point in time, because I'm not certain myself. So, yeah, you're probably the closest. But
And I didn't know initially that she had negotiated that. And so that was the impetus for me coming to negotiate, was I discovered the process that she went through to make that happen for herself, along with the other high school librarians. And she just retired, so I know she's sitting at her computer waiting for emails.
well, I don't know, the conversation I had with her, she was somewhat enjoying her relaxed retirement.
Yeah.
So hopefully that continues for her throughout other 2 months. Find out what's going on. Okay, any other questions about that? Again, what I
So
request,
is that just at the 3 comprehensive high schools?
Yes.
so like Capital City and Hope Street, not sure.
So transitioning over to Topeka High School, the documentation that I receive, and I don't have any other knowledge, but the documentation that I receive that dictates the days that I'm supposed to work, my extra contract days, it simply says high school librarian. So I'm assuming, I don't know if that applies to our non-traditional high schools, but I do know for sure that our traditional high schools, they all have 10, well, there are 2 librarians at a high school. So here, or at Topeka High School, I'm the head librarian, and then I have an assistant librarian, and she receives 3 contract days. So there are some finer details, that come with this situation. But I'm advocating for 10 days across the board because we're all preparing devices. So at the elementary school level, at Scott, it was me by myself working on about 500 devices. At the high school level, it's 2 librarians working on, a lot more, but we also have a building technician who can support us. So we do have extra days, but it's not simply because there's more work. The ratio of work, I would argue, across the district is relatively the same. There are some different nuances in there, but yeah.
Are there 2 librarians at Topeka West and Menlo Park also?
I don't know that there are. I don't think there are. I think that's something that has changed. It has fluctuated in the past. But I know for sure at Topeka High we have a lead and an assistant.
Michelle, do you know how far do you have?
We have 1 library media specialist who also will be teaching half-time in addition to the library media specialist duties of full-time.
Yeah, and I would also say that there are clerical positions that also is something that fluctuates. I know at Topeka High they did at one point have a clerk, a library clerk. So.
And we have that at Highland Park as well.
Yeah, and there's been discussion, I think, like informal discussions about just the different staffing of libraries throughout the district. So it's something that fluctuates.
I think you're right. I think Sue was sitting by her computer.
I wasn't being facetious, I promise you. Because if I send her something, she fires right back.
She said that, Sue said when she took the position at Topeka High School in 1997, all 3 high school librarians were already contracted to get the additional days. So it's been in place for 24 years. So.
Maybe she was defending it.
Yeah, maybe she was defending it, I don't know. But maybe she was lobbying for the assistant to get some time as well. So it has been in place for quite a while. 97 is when technology, actually mid-90s is when technology hit us in the classrooms. So not near like what it is today, but that may have been when I got my first computer in the classroom. We were all somewhat incompetent at that point in time.
So what is the estimated cost of this proposal?
We had, the best we can do with the estimated cost, and let me just pull out my calculator here real quick, is we estimated 19 librarians. We worked with the base salary times 10, or, the base salary. So it's $234 per day times 10, so 2,340 times 19. Am I doing the math there right, Gary?
Sounds like you're going in the right direction.
It's 44,460.
44,460. I think I have that somewhere.
It's on your document.
It just went on to the next page. Yeah, okay, 44,460 would be the total additional expense to the district. But again, I'll clarify that that is the base teacher salary. And all of our librarians have to have master's degrees, so. They should. The library science degree is a master's degree.
At a master's level, it would be $49,900 for all 19 of them.
49,900?
Yes.
49,900 at the rate of master degree teachers.
So basically 50,000.
Yep. That would be correct.
Where exactly in the agreement do you see the 10 days outlined?
And in answer to your question, I think Debbie just partially answered for you. It is not written into our professional agreement. It is a separate district document that outlines the extra days for a variety of certified staff members. Social workers is the example that she gave, but there are others as well. Any other questions or need for clarification? I'm not good about asking my students if they have questions.
Do you have any other questions, Sarah? We don't have any other questions
Okay.
this time.
Okay, do you want us to proceed? Do we want to just keep moving forward?
Yes.
All right, our next one is it is in our letter under the up to 3 mandatory for the purpose of addition or change, mandatory items for purpose of additional change. And we're now looking at Article 9, the grievance procedure. And in our contract book, Article 9, I'm actually looking at page 13. It is a rather long article. It goes on for a couple pages. But Article 9, Section D. Let me give you a chance to read the pieces that you made. We are suggesting a language change on Article 9. Brenda is going to hand you a copy. The blue is the suggested change, and the strike through is what we're replacing. Specifically, the association is concerned, obviously, about time limits. That's what Section D of the grievance procedure refers to. And the language that is already in place, failure at any step of this procedure to communicate the decision on a grievance within the specified time shall permit the aggrieved professional to proceed to the next step. That is the piece we would like to strike through and replace with failure of the General Director of Human Resources or his or her designee at step 1, or the superintendent or his or her designee at step 2 of the grievance procedure to schedule and hold a meeting or to communicate the decision on a grievance within the specified time limit shall deem the grievance granted, and the professional employee shall be granted the remedy sought. Failure at any step of this procedure to appeal the grievance to the next step within the specified time specified shall be deemed to be acceptance of the decision of that step.
It's pretty straightforward.
It is pretty straightforward.
I don't have any questions.
Let me organize myself here for a minute. Ready?
Yes.
I'm moving on.
Okay.
Clock's ticking on us, huh? I move on to the next piece in our mandatory items, Article 48, resignations and liquidated damages.
I can highlight it for them, sorry.
Yeah. That number 5 is the new language that the rest of you want.
Yep, no problem.
Thank you for that. You're awesome. And as you know, this article outlines liquidated damages. Referring back to the date of this year, employees who wish to resign in this calendar year had to notify the General Director of Human Resources in writing on or before the statutory date of June 4th, 2021. Professional employees shall be released from contractual obligations upon meeting the following conditions. Liquidated damages may not be assessed if there's a major family change, spouse transfer, and so on. That is language that's already in the contract. What we are asking for, and this, it's the COVID that continues to hang in the room, but I certainly don't want to tie this to COVID completely. I'll give you a second to get the copy in front of you. I think Brenda has highlighted the piece. This is actually additional language. Article 48 has a 1, 2, 3, 4, and this is 5 under Article 48. Okay, a little background on this one before I go through completely. As you know, I'm sure Debbie is very aware of this. Last year when changes were being made due to the pandemic, the micro classroom and so on, all of the different issues that we had to change, some district employees unfortunately decided not to take on those newly identified responsibilities and just simply resigned. As an association, I can tell you for sure that a lot of conversations were held on our part to try and retain the contracted employees if we could, but some of them chose to leave anyhow. Now, this is not, last year it happened at a higher level than it does normally, but these circumstances do come up from time to time where, and we may see some of this year, it's the last week of July, and an elementary principal may realize that she needs her first grade teacher teaching 5th grade, or needs an instructional coach to teach a semester of 4th grade. Any of those kinds of situations that come up. And so what we're asking here is if an employee is asked to do a different job than that for which they were originally hired, that liquidated damages not be assessed if that employee chooses not to take that job and chooses to resign instead. So again, I take us back to, it's the 4th week of July, the principal has hired somebody who's taught 1st grade for years, and now that principal needs that person to teach 5th grade, and rather than teach 5th grade, that teacher chooses to resign. According to the agreement, the assessed penalty would be $2,000. And so the language that we're asking is that liquidated damages will not be assessed when an employee chooses to resign mid-year, it has happened mid-year as well, or mid-summer after being notified by building administration that their job description has been altered or changed. So what we're asking for is for teachers to be allowed to, in the best case scenario, either choose to accept that job change or choose, unfortunately, to leave the district and continue to do that job for perhaps another school district. But we feel like, I know that because of the way the contract was written, the people who chose to resign in August and September of last year were assessed that penalty. So that's a rather egregious example. But it is an example that happens from year to year, where educators are asked to do something that they have not traditionally done or were not hired to do, and would like to leave their position or resign their position.
So you're talking more about job assignment than your job description.
That's probably, yeah, that's accurate. I looked at your main, my expert on this, yes. Either or.
Is described.
Well, I
And
think first grade to
what's
fifth
the
grade,
reasoning behind this?
the reasoning behind it, to allow members of our organization to opt out of a teaching or a job, just a teaching assignment that they really don't feel prepared to do well.
Or they don't want it?
Right. That's a different way of putting it.
That they didn't agree to do when they were hired.
Right.
Yeah, you're changing the contracted agreement of hiring after, it was established, and so this is just allowing for there to be a change of mind in taking that assignment.
So it's not an additional expense to the district, except for obviously having to replace a teacher. And we're not talking about someone that was hired in May and in July decides not to come. They've never been actually contracted under the position. We're talking about someone who's taught first grade for 20 years and is now being asked to teach fifth grade. Or someone who's taught middle school for 10 years and is now being reassigned to a high school. Or we had a PE teacher at Topeka High that's being reassigned to a middle school, to allow the teachers, this is if the assignment happens mid-year or if it happens mid-summer. I don't feel like I'm explaining that very well. Anybody got anything else?
Well, also.
Or maybe a better question which would help clarify.
Well, also there are certified staff who were asked to be teachers, who are certified to be a teacher, but their job assignment is something else entirely. A coach.
Like an instruction coach.
Interventionist.
Or a librarian.
Interventionist or librarian.
And we did that.
Counselors, social workers.
And we did that, this past year.
Right, we did. We had that happen a lot this past year. And a lot of our staff did exactly what was asked of them. They dropped their instructional coach responsibilities or maybe maintained those both at the same time while teaching second grade. So that was unique to this year, but we really don't want to tie it to the COVID event. We want to tie it to teachers being allowed to say, middle of July, you want me to teach fifth grade instead of kindergarten? I can't do that. I can't do it now.
But you say you don't want to tie it to the COVID event, when it was the pandemic that really prompted these sort of things to happen. So how can we say we don't want to tie it to?
Because it hasn't just happened during COVID. COVID certainly exacerbated the situation, but it has happened in the past. We do make move staff around from time to time. It happened quite a bit this spring, again, not related to COVID. We had elementary teachers who were teaching at Randolph, and next year they will be teaching at Williams. Or we have several examples of elementary people that are being shifted from one building to another. And that's not COVID related. That goes back to our numbers and our population, which is a continuing issue. The number of students. The high school teacher at my building who is going to the middle school is going specifically because of numbers. So we did move teachers this year. And so COVID exacerbated it in the summer of 2020, but in the summer of 2021, it's more about shifting staff to accommodate increased or decreased numbers at different buildings. And if those teachers don't want to move to that other building or that other grade level and prefer to exit their contract, but it's June 15th. So May 15th, they thought they were teaching PD next year at Topeka High. June 15th, they find out they're teaching PE at the middle school, we feel as if that member of our association should be allowed to opt out of their contract without paying the $500 penalty, which is what it is in June. So we're asking that the penalty be waived in a circumstance which, moving forward, hopefully will be rarer than they were in the last 12 months. But moving teachers from one building to another or one teaching assignment to another. So that's that. So when I say I don't want to tie it to the pandemic, I really don't. I just make that reference because I know Debbie had some resignations in August and September of last year. Because people chose not to take on that other teaching assignment.
To put it in context, if I were an Olympic athlete and I had planned and trained on doing a long jump at the Olympics, and then suddenly I was assigned to do the triple jump, it's a different skill set. And if I were wanting to do my best work, I would want to do the skill set that I had trained for and prepared for mindfully and diligently, rather than being suddenly disrupted and told to do something that I may not be prepared for.
Are you talking assignments or are you talking locations?
Yeah, we're getting stuck on vocabulary here.
Yeah, well,
I know what you're asking.
You're talking about a PE teacher to middle school being transferred to high school. You know, to me, that's the same skill set. You have a different age group, so it's a slight adjustment. So are you talking location or assignment?
I think we're talking about both. Reassignments, I know that, and Terrain, I think you had some teachers from your building.
Involuntary transfer.
Involuntary
If
transfer.
we had too many in our building, so we had a young lady that wanted to go. And, she ended up going to, no, she would have been different. She went to another district. Where was she? No.
That's an involuntary transfer.
It was an involuntary transfer. She did not want to go to the school they wanted to go to, teach the grade that they wanted to teach. So because it was something that was involuntary, they said, you gotta go, we have 3 people here. The liquidated damages is kind of an unfair. Because she's given an assignment in a building that she does not want to go to.
Okay.
And that's if she wants to go. There are several teachers that would say, okay, it's a job, I'm going.
So I have a couple more questions. So you say if the job description is altered. Now I have to tell you, HR regularly reviews job descriptions. And if we update a job description, does that mean everybody can leave without, you know, if we do a review of the job descriptions in December, does that mean everybody can leave when we update something? Without liquidated damages?
I hear what you're saying. I think what you're talking about is that the job description has changed. Like the job that I'm doing, I'm still doing that job, but the responsibilities of that job have been altered by the documentation coming out of HR. And in that case, no.
Okay.
I would not, and so perhaps we need some clarification on that. So I would say no, but myself, and I don't know, I can't speak for the other members of the team, but I had 3 elementary school teachers contact me this spring. They all happen to be first-year teachers, so last year was their first year. My mentee was a first-year teacher. They all came out of Emporia State together, and they were being relocated from one elementary school to another. Brand new, not sure, you know, just first-year teacher. There's so many things that they don't know. And so they, through my mentee, came to me and said, you know, I'm not going to be teaching 4th grade here anymore. I'm being reassigned over here. Now, my counsel is, you get to teach children, you get to teach children. At the end of the day, they make their own decisions. But these were teachers who were kind of in a panic because they were facing an unknown. And part of that discussion that we had was whether they wanted to stay in Topeka Public Schools or whether they should just cut and run at that point in time and go someplace else. I think my longevity, 30 years in Topeka Public Schools, kind of counsels, stay the course. Education is education is education. We do some things very well. There's other things we could do better, but no matter what district you go to, that's what you're going to run into. But as Michelle said, it's almost like not only do we want you to not teach this anymore and now teach this, or not teach here anymore, teach over here. If you choose to leave your contract, not only have you lost whatever your cherished position, teaching position was, but now you have to pay a fee for making the choice to leave a district. I'm not explaining the hard feelings that can happen as part of that very well, but it does become like a double negative for the staff member who is being reassigned.
It's a matter of.
I like your explanation. I like the advice that you give. If you're teaching kids, you're teaching kids.
Exactly. I agree with you 100%, but I'm just one small fraction of this whole association. So I have to be the voice for all of them. And sometimes my advice is taken and sometimes it isn't. And I'm sure you experience the same kinds of things.
I also.
For some people, it's terrifying if they went from fifth grade to kindergarten. For me, then, I might give it a shot,
But you've also been teaching as long as I have. Those of us with more experience are a little bit more flexible.
Some people go, let's do it.
Okay, so what, I don't know if you have these numbers, but what percentage or what are the number of teachers that found out about their assignment after the statutory deadline?
I don't know. I can identify two.
I know of another one this year, yeah. That had nothing to do with the COVID change.
So, but you're sure that your one isn't part of her too, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I mean, I'm just curious.
No, I don't think we're talking about a significant number, if that's kind of where you're going. I don't think we're talking about a significant number. I think we're talking probably a number of reassignments is one thing, but I'm talking about numbers of teachers who, after being told you're being reassigned to this task, that would actually leave the district. I'd say we're probably talking about less than 10.
And they were told that they were being reassigned. It wasn't, hey, we are eliminating your classroom. Here are some choices.
The teachers that I talked to, no, it wasn't handled like that. Their principal handled it in a better manner, as in, we don't need this many fourth grade teachers anymore. We're going to try and find you a job within this building, but you need to be aware you may end up going to that building.
I think
And I'm going to refer to my elementary expert on this.
Don't refer to me. He said he has personal.
So the question was, individual reassigned. I wasn't reassigned. I was asked to be reassigned. This was 2 years ago, pre-pandemic. One of the questions was, this is before or after the pandemic. And I was asked, there was an option given, and in the best interest of a newer teacher, I took that reassignment. Coincidentally, during that same year, the assignment that I received was reassigned again. And then after that, a third reassignment. So, and excuse me, that was pre-pandemic, pandemic, virtual, and summer. So that was in 1 year.
And you're still here.
You're still here.
There's a reason we're at this table.
Oh, I like that.
We've got good staying power.
Well, the point is, the article that we're talking about,
Yes,
there's a purpose for statutory deadlines and liquidated damages.
yes.
And that purpose is so that we have teachers. So teachers cannot willy-nilly skip out of contracts in the middle of the year and take off and go elsewhere if they decide that something happens that they don't particularly like. And what you're asking for us to give consideration to is to allow a staff member who may get upset about an assignment or losing an assignment to just let them leave if they decide to leave without any consequences. If we did totally away with liquidated damages, then we could keep them under contract. We have the legal ability to do that. And if a teacher leaves when they're still under contract and accepts a job with another school district, we have the ability to go and take their license. Liquidated damages prevents all of that from happening. And what you're asking is for us to give up that ability and let people at the drop of a hat decide to leave if they get angry about something. And we just find that a very hard pill to swallow.
And I hear what you're saying. I understand completely. And I would say, I would disagree with one part of what you said, and that is teachers leaving willy-nilly, only because the decision to move a teacher from one teaching assignment to another requires a lot of thought on the part of your team. It's not done willy-nilly. It's, there's consulting done at the administrative level. There's consulting done with the principal. The principal has to make some decisions, of course, about their building, moving a person. So there's a lot that happens before the staff member is approached with this other teaching assignment. And I know that. I know that from Topeka Public Schools. We don't do anything in this district without giving a lot of thought to the choices that we're making, the places we're going, whether they are short-term plans, long-term plans. And of course, we are buffeted by the winds of enrollment, finance, and so on. So the decision to move a teacher is not a willy-nilly decision. And I don't think that the teacher's decision to not accept that assignment is a knee-jerk reaction either. Again, the conversation I had just this year went on for days and days. Teachers were uncertain about what to do next and where they should go. So nobody is making a decision to walk out the door willy-nilly. And I am aware that the liquidated damages are in here because we do need bodies in the classroom when the children show up. We can't at the last minute be filling those spots. And I understand that as well. I get all that you're saying about that. And as I said before, we're not talking about a large number of teachers. Again, I would estimate it might be less than 10. Even that number seems high to me. And from your perspective, replacing 10 elementary teachers would be a nightmare right now. It would. But these decisions on the part of all parties are not made in a knee-jerk type of reaction. They're made in a way that is in the best interest of the students, the school district, and ultimately the individual themselves. And, as Jermaine has said, and as I have said, as long as we have children to teach, we're fine. But we are only one part of the whole bargaining unit. So we have members of our bargaining unit who know that that's not in their skill set to teach whatever it is, whatever the reassignment is. And so they choose to walk. So I don't think it's something that's made last minute. And I don't feel like we're asking you to give up any of the other stuff. We're not asking that any of the other things in this language be changed. We understand why they're there, and I'm very aware of the fact that you can pull a teacher's teaching certificate if they choose to move and break contract. But that piece of the law I'm very aware of. We're just trying to advocate for those teachers who, based on the circumstances moving forward of changing enrollment, the changing face of education in general, who may choose maybe to leave the field of education even.
I don't think we have any other questions about that.
If there's any clarification that you need, specific examples, Jeremy gave an example of what he chose, his moving around. We can find specific examples. I don't think that helps our argument anymore. I think you've heard what we have to say and why we've said what we have. We've heard what you have to say, and so we'll move forward from there. Okay?
Sounds good.
Any other questions or concerns on any other members of your party? We're rolling here, LR.
Yes.
What? Yeah,
Billy's back.
I know. Welcome back. You've been hanging out with those new teachers, right?
Yes.
It's always such an exciting thing. I mean, it's a lot, but it's exciting. I find that exciting. As a matter of fact, I got my letter from my principal last week, and she did not list the new hires, and I was a little sad, so I'm going to find out what new people we have coming into our building. I always like to go and welcome them. It's an interesting, it's a noble yet interesting profession. Okay, we ready for the hard stuff? LR, your favorite. We're going to talk about dress code. Ready? It's everybody's favorite. We've had this discussion before. We have.
Well, I thought you were going to switch back to our tiny little one proposal that we brought this year, since Billy's here.
Oh, well, we could switch back to yours now that Billy is here. Billy, are you ready for that? You've had a busy day. We can do that as well. It's whichever direction you want to go. I'm good with that.
Before we tackle that, can we take a break?
I think that sounds like a good idea.
All right. Thanks.
Back at
We'll take that one.
10 minutes.
Let's make it 4 to you.
Okay, cool. Got it. That sounds good. I'm gonna go to the restroom first. I'm gonna go outside. I want to do this. I'm gonna run to the restroom and then we'll.
Are we
I
ducking
have some people
outside?
who want to step outside and
Okay.
fly out.
I think you Gary. It's physical up there.
For no reason.
I tried to really focus on the, like, protecting the investment because it's true.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, about 10 minutes. And I have my phone with me in case we have more time. Don't text me. I think you just didn't want to cover dress code.
Yeah,
Talk about the 8 hour day.
we're still on, yes.
Because when we met.
There's no way for me to turn it off.
When we met and delivered the letter, when we looked at the letter, because you know, we went around the corner, so dress code. So that's why none of us are wearing Crocs or flip flops.
I almost wore holy capris today.
And,
Like I said, I
What is
haven't
it?
shaved, so.
my leggings are, what are they called in the contract?
What?
The leggings, they're called yoga pants? Is that what it says?
Jogging athletic suits?
Spandex. That's not spandex.
That's a 90s thing.
They are technically spandex.
They have jeans out of spandex now.
Hmm?
They make jeans out of spandex now.
Jeggings are, yeah.
So, do you see this nasty, like, stuff on my foot? This is from, like, over a month ago at Topeka High. There's dust.
There's what?
Dust mites.
You know.
And I had, like, a really bad reaction to all of these. I was looking at a picture of it on there. Oh, that's what I was thinking. That is
When I
one
first worked at Topeka High, and I taught summer school when we were back in the 90s. I taught in Martha Harris Ring, which is the theater ring, down 119, taught down in the assistant. And because it's a theater ring, it's full of wigs and costumes and just all that kind of stuff, you know? And so roaches was
Oh.
getting into. That was very hard. And it was my way of keeping the kids from messing with, the wigs and just because we wanted to, mess with that stuff and break it. So I'm like, oh. I said, no, I just didn't do that in the coaches in here. I said, I've even opened this desk. I've opened it once, I saw it, I closed the door, I never opened the desk again. And that kept the kids, first of all, from bringing snacks in the room, and it kept them from messing with them. So one day I'm sitting on the desk teaching about something.
Oh,
And
no.
the roach is crawling down my shoulder.
Oh, no.
Oh my God.
And I looked down and, I got freaked out like that, so I just kind of spunked it off and they're like, we get it. Nobody can.
Everybody's like this.
From then on out, if I wanted to sit, I would sit on a table.
Read that comment. Well, I wish I would be,
Oh,
wish I would have read it.
I read it already.
Did you read it?
Yeah. She posted on
She has to
Facebook.
go to algebra now?
Yeah.
No, that's kind of big. Come on.
That's kind of a big deal.
Subject matter is a big deal.
Yes, it is. Yeah, she's posted that on Facebook.
Wow.
What?
Pam Vanderbilt.
Yeah. She's on here. Or at least she was, I guess I should say. I don't know if she still is.
Like I said, you're welcome to present your questions. Well, I mean, I was trying to do that too. And going as a priest, that's not what we said. Not all of these things. This is your favorite. I don't know, I would be a problem. I would be fine. Teachers would just say, come down. And then I mean, my philosophy has always been this, I don't want to teach this for the next year, but I can do it for 1 year. I just don't want to do it for 2. So in that next year, I would have conversations with the principal about how I didn't want to do that. And I've done that. I don't know. I used to teach the Spanish in middle school, so I would teach 9 weeks of Spanish. And when I was associate department and the language arts department, she had taught me French. Karen and I got together at some point in time and told me like, I'm not teaching this class. I went to the principal and I said, don't do this anymore. She said, oh, I did you. That's what we started. And then when I came back in the district, I taught Spanish for 2 years, and I thought it really was such a year. I said, I'm going to put the original certificate this summer. I don't care. I don't want to teach Spanish. I want to teach social studies. I can't do it here. I'm doing someplace else. I put in a request for transfer. And the agent was coming in the principal, and she said, well, you can get it. I want to do social studies teacher. It was even better than when somebody else out, which I felt bad about that, but I had some seniority. So, it was, yeah, it's interesting. So, I'm going to really do something for you. I think I had some conversation with my sister. I'm going to do this for that. And we're going to find something else.
So,
I saw that.
thank you.
What I handed out to you was okay, what I shared with you was our one proposal. The most simplistic version. The three traditional high schools will operate on an 8-period schedule. I'm happy to kind of share the thinking or the reason for that change. So as we look at PSBE's outcomes for graduation rate being our goal of 95%, and then also as we look at learning loss over this last year, how we might be able to support our high school students in learning loss, but also in reaching that graduation rate within the 4 years of high school. And so when you add an 8th period, you are adding essentially 2 classes, one each semester, over the course of 4 years, or 4 additional credits, or 8 half credits towards graduation rate. So if the student is a struggling student, that gives them more opportunity to recover credits and graduate with their 4-year cohort. If you are a high achieving student, it gives you opportunity to graduate from high school with additional certifications and or college credit when you leave. For example, we have concurrent credit or attending WIT or TCAL. This coming year, 2 of our high schools are engaging with the Equity Lab to offer courses through Stanford and Arizona State as well. So those are opportunities that our high achieving students would then have the opportunity to participate in, and it wouldn't take away from other opportunities and electives at their school. I'm open for questions.
I have a question that actually I thought about the other day as we were coming towards this. I saw something, I couldn't find it, but I think you can answer this question. That said, we were going to be doing some diagnostic testing of all of our students this year to try and determine learning loss in general. But then when I tried to go back and find so what exactly is the plan, or what's the diagnostic tool that we're going to be using?
So we will be utilizing FastBridge, TK, well actually, excuse me, K through 12th grade, at at preschool will be continuing to use IEPs. But Bass Bridge will assess both math and literacy skills at each grade level. It is offered in both English and Spanish. It's one of the reasons that we selected it as the option of delivering it in Spanish as well. And at kindergarten through fifth grade, it looks, for those who are familiar, it looks very much like Phyllis previously. And it is initially, that piece was going to happen regardless as part of the KSDE dyslexia initiative. But we are also getting the math portion of this as well, which should help us assess learning goals for our students.
And I know we did some assessments in the spring this year. I'm going to leave that word "some" out there. Were we able to determine anything from those assessments, or do we know anything? Like we tested the students in the building, but we didn't test the remote students. Did we get anything definitive from that data about learning loss? Or
So we gave the CAP, so the Kansas assessments, but that was the only across the board assessment that we gave. Some schools did give the Scantron assessment independently or individually at schools. And so this will be the first opportunity to really take a deep dive into learning loss.
are we going to be using Scantron again this year?
Yes.
I'm a big fan of Scantron. For a variety of different reasons, I think it's a very good diagnostic tool. So adding an instructional period, I don't know if you clarified this. When we talked, it obviously is not for this year. It's for the 2022, 2023 school year, correct?
Correct. Schedules were made in May for this.
Right.
And that would.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the principals were the one that's building the master schedules. I do know that. So I was just clarifying for those who might be watching and panicking, thinking they might, that it would become sooner than that. I know you mentioned some of the enrichment programs. I have a list here that you gave me. What are some of the, we obviously are very familiar with TCAP, Washburn Tech, some of those programs. I believe you mentioned in the email that we got things like the IB program. I mean, those things are coming down the line. Can you elaborate a little bit more on the enrichment programs?
Absolutely. So beyond WIT and TCAP, we offer a pretty deep offering of concurrent enrollment classes through Washburn University, which over the last 3 years since ESSA was re-approved, we've been allowed to use federal dollars to help support tuition. So we've increased the number of students getting college credit during high school pretty extensively over the last few years. So there's that opportunity. This year, the Equity Lab, which is a national equity lab, reached out to us, and they support Title I high schools in offering them courses through some big name universities. For example, we're going to be able to offer Introduction to Computer Science. There's a Poetry in America as a language arts course. But there is a third course that we're offering this year too at Topeka High and Highland Park High School. And that is kind of a flipped class in that it is a period during their school day in which a teacher is supporting them. But then they also have a class in the evening with a professor from that university and kids from all across the country that are also participating in that class. And then the teachers during the school day, the intent is really to support them in making sure that they are on track, that they're getting their assignments done, that they're there as a support system. for the students. And then they are getting 3 hours of college credit at the rate of $210 for those 3 college credits, of which we can use their Title I federal dollars to help pay that tuition. And then you had asked about, I had listed IB, International Baccalaureate Program, which is something that we're exploring. It's not something.
Yeah, I
that
know
we
it's
have-
a rather rigorous
Correct.
program. I think Robert Washington has it right now.
And so we have not committed to that, but it is a program that we are exploring the opportunity to offer to the public schools.
And then you also mentioned, we've got 2 groups of students here. We've got our high flyers, and we've got our kids that are, our freshmen this year, that we had that conversation before about the students that we're really concerned about. Was this going to, I don't know. What I'm trying to figure out is if I'm the middle of the road kid, how does it help me? If I'm behind, yes, I need that extra time. If I'm a high flyer, I'm going to be looking at those extra opportunities. But if I'm just a middle of the road kid who left freshman year this year with, let's say, 6 credits instead of 7 or 8, so not horrible, time to catch up. What's in it for me other than taking another class?
Well, I think we oftentimes don't have the opportunity to take electives, particularly if we're going to do like Washburn Tech, which I would tell you is not necessarily our advanced students who choose to go to WIC. Some of them are, but that's true of college credit. You don't have to be a wizard to take college credit while you're in high school. So there are some opportunities for those students as well to, a goal in our strategic plan is for students to leave high school with some college credit. And so this allows the average to above average student to engage in those opportunities. We do have a few students every year who entertain studying abroad. And so that allows them to be gone for a year, but still graduate with their cohort as well. So there are a lot of different scenarios and opportunities that would be individual to students. I think both the struggling student, the average student, and the advanced student. It also, I think, allows some of our average kids who may not know what they want to do after school to explore, to take more classes in those college and career pathways and kind of maybe figure out in advance of going to college what they want to study.
Lucinda, we had somebody inquire, does this alter the day for students and teachers lengthwise at all? Just to clarify.
Clarification, I know the answer to this question, but I'll let you clarify, Billy.
No,
Does it
start
change
time,
start and end time?
no, it does not change plan time, collaboration, lunch, just the instructional class periods would be 8 instead of 7.
And would that impact their, I don't know what they call it, like the advisor, home-based, homeroom, home?
It would adjust all class periods, including that to, obviously if you're adding a class period, the others would be shortened a little bit throughout the week.
But it wouldn't eliminate it?
It would not.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else on the table have any questions? I know we looked at like 3 different schedules as well. So I know that I need to share those with the team so that they can see what the different schedules proposals are, which is probably the origin of that question. What is our current graduation rate and what is our goal?
Well, the goal is 100%.
Oh, yes.
But the KSDE goal for all districts in Kansas is 95%. I don't have our current graduation rate for this year, but I'll bring that back to the table. I believe it's around 81 or 82%.
District-wide?
District-wide.
Because I know it's a little bit different in each high school too.
Correct.
All right. don't know that I have any other questions at this time. I've got quite a few things in front of me here that are all related to this idea of adequate instruction day. So I think we've got enough information for now. I think as a team, we'll need to talk a little bit more. Everybody? Yeah. All right. Well, I think we may somewhat end the day, how will it be? Office. Yeah. We could change professional director. I don't know if anybody has any, we do want to talk about this. And okay, so I think what we would like to do is caucus for a little bit about this particular issue. And we might come back to the table today or maybe come back in the morning. LR, there is a couple of things that I wanted to talk to you about also before we end our day. So I'm not sure exactly how you want to facilitate that. This is kind of a big one, Billy, so we're going to spend some time talking about it.
Why don't you and I go ahead and have our discussion with Cinda.
Okay.
Then you and your group can go ahead and break for a caucus. We can call it a day. Just resume discussions tomorrow morning.
Sounds good. Very good. Yeah, we'll reconvene at 9, of course, in the morning. So reconvene at 9.
Yes.
Okay. A few minutes with